The wind howled over the sprawling Montana ranch as the stallion reared in defiance, eyes wild with fear and fury. His muscles rippled like waves beneath his obsidian coat, hooves lashing the air, nostrils flaring. Untamable, they called him. Legend said he threw off every trainer who dared touch a saddle to his back. And watching from the deck of his log cabin, arms crossed and whiskey glass in hand, billionaire tycoon Mason Claiborne chuckled at the girl walking steadily toward the fence. She couldn't have been more than 12. Thin. Pale. Wearing hand-me-down overalls and rain boots a size too big. Her honey blonde hair was tucked behind her ears, and her wide blue eyes locked onto the stallion, not with fear, but with something else. Something deeper. Something Mason couldn't place. "That's Claire," the stable master muttered, stepping beside Mason. "The girl from the therapy farm nearby. She's different. Doesn't speak much. Autistic, they say. Spends hours just watching animals." Mason raised an eyebrow, a smirk twitching at his lips. "What's she doing on my property?" "She slipped through the gate. Her mom's out there looking for her. I was just about to." But Claire had already stepped inside the corral. Mason's smirk twisted into disbelief. "She's going to get herself killed." The stallion, Titan, snorted violently, pacing the edge of the enclosure, his enormous frame tense and ready to bolt. Yet the girl didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She just crouched down, and waited. No sudden moves. No loud sounds. Just stillness. Mason watched, dumbfounded, as Titan slowly stopped pacing. The stallion tilted his head, confused, then cautiously stepped forward. One step. Then two. Claire extended a trembling hand, palm open. Her fingers fluttered slightly, like the flicker of a leaf in a breeze. The stallion huffed, his breath misting in the cool air, then, unthinkably, lowered his head. His nose brushed her palm. Mason's glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the deck. Word spread like wildfire. Mason Claiborne, the man who built an empire on power and precision, who owned oil fields, racehorses, and private islands, found himself mesmerized not by money or machines, but by a 12-year-old girl who barely said a word. Claire came back the next day. And the next. Mason never asked her to. No one did. She just appeared, always at the same time, always walking straight to Titan. Some days she brought apples. Some days she brought music, a small, old cassette player with worn buttons and classical melodies. But mostly, she brought silence. And somehow, in that silence, the wild stallion softened. Mason watched from his window. Every single day. On the 5th morning, he walked down to the stables himself. Claire was brushing Titan's mane, humming softly, Beethoven, he realized. Her touch was gentle, rhythmic, patient. "He won't let my best trainers near him," Mason said quietly. Claire looked up. Her eyes met his. "He's not angry," she whispered. Her voice was light but firm. "He's just scared." Mason's chest tightened. Something about the way she said it, so simply, so purely, cut deeper than any boardroom negotiation ever had. That afternoon, Mason visited the therapy farm where Claire lived. Her mother, a kind-eyed nurse named June, explained everything. How Claire didn't speak until she was 5. How loud noises and crowds overwhelmed her. How animals, especially horses, were the only place she found peace. "She sees the world differently," June said, folding a worn napkin in her lap. "Not less. Just, different." Mason nodded, quiet. For once, he had no words. Weeks passed. Titan, once the terror of the ranch, now followed Claire like a shadow. She taught him to accept a saddle, to lower his head for halter, even to trot beside her. Mason watched her with quiet awe, something shifting inside him, something buried under decades of wealth, isolation, and pride. Then came the storm. A violent thunderstorm rolled in one evening, shaking windows and rattling fences. Lightning cracked across the sky, and Titan, caught outside, panicked. He bolted through the pasture, his eyes wild with terror. Ranch hands shouted, tried to corner him, but it was no use. He was faster, stronger, furious. Claire, soaked to the bone, ran after him. Mason yelled for her to stop, but she didn't. She slipped into the field barefoot, her cassette player tucked under her arm. Kneeling in the mud, she clicked play. Soft piano notes floated through the rain. "Titan," she called, her voice cracking. "It's okay. It's just noise." For a moment, Mason thought the stallion would charge her. But then, the impossible happened. Titan stopped. He trotted toward Claire, trembling, soaked, but drawn by her voice, her music, her calm. He lowered his head, pressed it to her shoulder, and let out a long, broken sigh. Mason, drenched and speechless, felt the tightness in his chest snap wide open. The next morning, Mason did something he hadn't done in years. He visited a school, then a hospital, then a foundation. Within a month, he launched the Claire Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to animal-assisted therapy for neurodiverse children. He poured millions into programs that matched rescue animals with kids like Claire, who needed more than medication and diagnoses, they needed connection. Reporters flocked to him. Investors questioned him. But Mason didn't care. Because one morning, as he walked to the stables, Claire ran up to him with a drawing, Titan, standing tall, with wings like an angel. "You gave him a second chance," she said softly. "Now he gives them to others." Mason knelt, his eyes misting. "No, sweetheart," he whispered. "You gave us all a second chance." Years later, long after the foundation grew across states, even countries, people would still talk about the billionaire who laughed at a little autistic girl, until she tamed his wildest horse and, in doing so, healed something far wilder inside him. And in that healing, the world changed. One act of quiet bravery. One bond no one saw coming. And one billionaire, forever humbled by the silent strength of a child. Because sometimes, the wildest hearts don't need to be broken. They just need to be understood.